So we'll be covering the various topics of C++ today, like the OOPS concepts, the structure of C++, real-time applications, its advantages and disadvantages, what are the industries that use C++, and the various job openings with the C++ skill set. We'll be looking at each of it today. To start with the introduction, C++ was developed by a Danish scientist Bjarne Stroustrup. It's a general purpose programming language which is developed as an enhancement to the C language, also known as C with classes, to include the object oriented paradigm, which is a model or a pattern. It's a compiled language and it is mid level, it's also known as a mid level language, rendering its advantage of development in low level drivers to high level applications like games, desktop apps, GUI, etc. It's also a cross-platform language which can be used to create high-performance applications. So since it is known as a cross-platform language, it is portable and it's also used to develop applications that can be adapted to multiple platforms. We can either develop it in Linux platform and use it on Windows, or vice versa is also possible. So it gives the programmers a high level of control over system resources and memory. It's also called as a general purpose language or the object oriented programming language because its main focus is on objects and manipulations around these objects. It gives us a clear structure to program and allow code to be reused, lowering the development costs, which is the major concern. It also has a rich library support. Saying a rich library support would be both the standard libraries which are available in C++ as well as the third-party libraries, which is the Boost libraries, for faster and rapid development. Through C++ standard library template libraries, we have many functions such as containers which can be used, sets or map, hash tables, etc. These containers are or the container classes store the objects and data. So implementing data structures can be accessed in a sequential manner using sequence containers like vector, list, dequeues, arrays, etc. The main aim is to provide a quick search and minimize the complexity of the sorting that can be done to the data structures. So coming to the pointer support, C++ pointer support helps the users to directly manipulate the storage address, which is a low level, which helps in doing a low level programming where we might need to completely explicitly control the storage of variables. It's also it's called as a compiled language because it contributes to its speed as well. The compilation and the execution time of C++ is much faster compared to any general purpose programming language. So there are various versions of this C++ language. There are we would talk about three major versions of it, which are C++ 11, C++ 14, and C++ 17. So yeah. So these are the major versions. C++ language was initially standardized in 1998 by ISO IEC JTC, which is nothing but the Joint Technical Committee of International Organization for Standardization and International Electrotechnical Commission in 1988. So the first version was released in October 1998, which is C++ 98 version. Further, with the introduction of value initialization, it was released in 2003, whose version is named as C++ 03. Later, there were several editions and reversions of it. Like the major bug fixing of C++ 98 version was done in C++ 03 version, whereas in C++ 11, there's a major reversion done. That is, there are several additions to the language, like the Boost libraries, smart pointers, lambda expressions, delete or the default specifiers, R value references, L value references. automatic type deductions or the uniform initializer lists, override, const expressions, etc. I have mentioned a few changes here, but there are still many to list out. So further, we have C++ 14 version, which is a small improvement done on C++ 11 version. It was released in 2014. So here we have binary literals as addition, generic lambda expressions, or the lambda capture initializers, return deductions, or the declare type. They have deprecated certain attributes or variable templates. So there are several to discuss. Uh, I've listed out a few here. Uh, Post which we have C++ 17 as a major revised version, which was released in 2017. Here we have a template argument deduction for template classes, folding expressions, const expression lambdas, inline variables, and new library features like std optional, std invoke, std apply, std variant, and parallel algorithms, etc., which are included. We are expecting another version in 2021, which is C++ 20. Uh, uh, that is the recent version we were expecting. Coming to the next topic, which is the procedural programming versus the object-oriented programming. Procedural programming is the language C or Pascal uses procedural programming. Object-oriented programming, or OOPS, is the language that we are discussing right now, which is C++, Java, C#. All these come under the object-oriented programming, which deal with the classes and objects. So the major difference between these two is procedural programming. It follows a breakdown, a step-by-step approach. It breaks down the complete task into collection of variables or routines through a sequence of instructions. So each step is carried out in a systematic manner so that the computer can understand what it's going to do. Whereas if you check the object-oriented programming, we have classes and objects to create models based on the real-world environment. So it makes it easy to maintain and modify the existing code, as new objects which are created will inherit the properties or characteristics from the existing ones. Saying classes and objects here, you might not understand it exactly, but when we talk about the C++ features in the further slides, you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about, various concepts of objects or the classes. The approach wise, if you consider POP, which is the procedural oriented programming language, the main program, as I said, we would be dividing into small parts, which is functions, and treat it as a separate program. We'll have individual programs for it. Whereas in OOPS, we have objects and classes, and the program is divided into small chunks, which are the instances of classes. And with procedural programming uses a top-down approach, and object-oriented programming uses a bottom-up approach. Top-down approach in the sense you're breaking the bigger problem into a small one and then repeat the process with each problem. Bottom-down approach, we would be using objects to represent the classes. So that's the difference. And we don't have any access specifiers or access modifiers in procedural oriented programming. We have introduced private, public, and protected access modifiers. We are introduced to it in object oriented programming. And object oriented programming has certain features like data hiding, data abstraction, data encapsulation, which makes it more secure than the procedural oriented programming. Complexity wise, this object-oriented programming has new data objects, and existing objects can be easily created from the object-oriented programs. So it makes it less complex than the procedural-oriented programming. If you have a large program, it makes really it is complex to the developer to understand each and every function or the flow of the program. Whereas if you compare it with the object oriented programming, you have several classes. Each class has only a single responsibility. If there's a database class, it takes care of the databases. And if there's another class, SQL class, query class, it takes care of all the queries, either to fetch the database content or to write to the database content. So it makes it less complex compared to the procedural oriented programming. Yeah, the languages that use it, C, Pascal, Fortran, in that use procedural programming, and C++, C Sharp, Java, Python use object-oriented programming. I hope it's clear. I'm going forward with the next slide. Yeah, the structure of C++. So any structure of C++, it starts with the documentation. So when you start writing a program, you need to document what exactly are you going to code. So I've just written a rough program here, illustrating the area of a rectangle. So it doesn't look exactly like this when you write a real-time application. You need to write the file name and uh, the author name, what is the purpose of this function or the class. So you have several things to document here. Due to space constraint, I have given only the program name. So we also include the headers here, headers or the standard library section, where I'm using the IO stream here, the input output stream with because I'm using C out or C in. So I've had to include the headers, respective headers in this section. Then any global declaration we would do after this STD um, before the class declaration. So next comes the class declaration and the class members or the member function declarations, and post which we have the main function here. So any class would be default members would be private. So if you have to access the data members or the member functions outside the class, you need to declare them in public. So we need to access the members. How do you access the members outside the class? Is by declaring creating an instance of the class, that is an object. So R1 is the object of type rectangle, and here with this object I'm initializing the length and the breadth, and I'm calculating the area of the rectangle. So I'll also code the same once I discuss the OOPS concepts. I'll give you an idea of how it actually works. So this is about the structure of the C++ program. Moving ahead with the OOPS concepts. So we have several concepts here, like the classes, objects, data abstraction, data encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, data binding, and message passing. So as the name suggests, we use objects in this in object-oriented programming. We aim to implement the real world entities using inheritance, using polymorphism, and the other features as mentioned here. So we use classes to bind the data and the functions that operate on them. So here is a small example of how a class looks. So every class has data types. So data members are the function data members or the member data will be as shown here. The name or register number or the course would be the data members, and the member functions get data display would use the data members to manipulate those uh, uh, to manipulate or operate on the data members. So here objects will represent the collection of the data members or the member functions. Basically, an object is an identifiable entity with some characteristics and the behavior. It is an instance of a class. When you define a class, here when a class rectangle is created, you will not allocate any memory. But when a object of that class type is being created, you would once this is instantiated, the object is allocated certain memory. So because this has to operate on that, and it has to change the data members and the member functions. So class is basically a user defined data type. It holds both the member data members and the member functions, which can be used, which can be accessed outside the class using the object. I hope you understand here. Um, so moving ahead with the data abstraction and encapsulation. Um, Data abstraction is hiding implementations and providing only the essential information. So the essential and the important features of the program are displayed to the user while hiding the implementation or the background details. Basically, we can have the example of an ATM machine or a car or any day-to-day day-to-day mobile phone or any machines that you use. So, for example, if you take a ATM machine, you insert your card, and you would be provided only the data, the interface that asks you the PIN and any the uh, amount to be entered, and it displays the amount after deduction. That's it, which is the exposed interface to the user. The implementation details or the core functionalities, such as how it digs into your account or how it fetches the account details, the account summary, is not provided to the user. It is not of any use to the user as well. Only the interface is exposed to the user. So that's about the data abstraction. Encapsulation, a class itself is an encapsulation. It contains the data members and the member functions. So wrapping these functions and data into a single unit is nothing but encapsulation. So here you see a class where you have member variables and the member functions. So this is class represents the encapsulation. Moving ahead with the inheritance and polymorphism. Inheritance is the ability to derive the properties and characteristics from another class. So basically here it's a parent-child relationship. The class whose properties get inherited is the parent, which is the base class or the superclass, and the class that inherits its properties from another class is the derived class or the child class or the subclass. So here we have animal as the base class, and you can as you see here, dog is a derived class. You can also have cat or camel or any other animal which is a child of this parent class. So what is the use of inheritance? The concept of reusability. This supports the concept of reusability. Like whenever you want to create a new class, and there's already a class which includes some of its code that we want to rewrite. So we can simply reuse the code from the parent class and write a derived class, so that you end up reusing the fields and reducing the code redundancy. So the fields like member functions or the data members of from the existing class can be overridden into the derived class, and you can reduce the code redundancy as mentioned here. And polymorphism is the ability to be displayed in many forms. Here we have two types of polymorphisms: compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. So any operation it can exhibit different behaviors in different instances. So the behavior depends upon the type of data that is used within the operation, the type of parameters or the arguments that you pass in the operation. So we have here compile time, which is also called as the early time binding, and runtime. Runtime polymorphism is a late time binding. Here, compile time binding is again divided into two types, which is a function overloading and the operator overloading. When we say function overloading, we are using a single function name to perform different types of tasks. Like you can use the same function. Say I'm trying to add two numbers. I use a sum function with two parameters or two arguments passed to it, and I can overload the same function with the same name, function name, but different number of parameters. If I had to add three parameters later, I'll overload the same function with three parameters. So that's how the function overloading works. Method overloading uh, is also function overloading. Operator overloading exhibits different behaviors with different instances of operators. So you make an operator uh, to actually exhibit different behaviors based upon the different instances it works on. Coming to runtime polymorphism, which is also a late binding, which is also called as late binding, we have function overriding as the a major part here, which is uh, it's nothing but you use the same function with the function definition as well. From the base class, you derive the same function in the derived class. Say I'm having an animal base class here, which has eat and sleep as functions defined within the class. So when I use the same eat and sleep in the derived class, it is function overriding, because this is dog is the derived of this animal class, which is the base class. So here function overriding means we are using the same functions in both the uh, base class and the derived class, right? Uh, So here virtual functions are the runtime, it supports the runtime polymorphism without using virtual functions, and with virtual functions, what is the different behavior that a program exhibits? We'll see when we write a program. Let me complete the OOPS concepts first.